In 1872, a discovery emerged from ancient Mesopotamia that many believed would destroy the Bible forever. Buried beneath the ruins of Nineveh, archaeologists uncovered clay tablets older than most biblical manuscripts, and written upon them were stories that sounded shockingly familiar. Creation, a great flood, divine beings, ancient kings, a preserved survivor. Suddenly critics declared, the Bible copied older myths, case closed, or so it seemed. But the deeper historians investigated, the stranger the evidence became. Because older does not automatically mean original, and similarities do not automatically mean copying. Today, you will discover what archaeologists actually found beneath the sands of Mesopotamia. You will see why ancient flood stories exist all over the world. You will understand why Genesis differs dramatically from surrounding myths, and you will uncover a possibility most people never consider. Perhaps the real mystery is not why Genesis resembles ancient stories. Perhaps the real mystery is why ancient civilizations remembered the same events at all. Part 1. The Tablets that shocked the world. In 1872, George Smith was examining fragments from the library of Ashurbanipal, a library buried beneath Nineveh for more than 2,500 years. The tablets were broken, fragmented, covered with cuneiform writing. As Smith translated the text, he suddenly realized what he was reading. A flood account, a preserved survivor, animals brought aboard a vessel, a mountain landing, birds released after the waters receded. According to reports from the time, Smith became so overwhelmed that he reportedly stood up and began removing his clothes in excitement before the scholars present. The room was stunned. Newspapers across Europe quickly reported the discovery. Many believed Genesis had just been exposed as mythology. For the first time in modern history, people thought they possessed evidence that a biblical story existed in written form outside the Bible itself. But there was a problem. The deeper scholars read the tablets, the more differences they found. The tablets came from the library of Ashurbanipal, built around the 7th century BC, containing over 30,000 clay tablets, one of the largest knowledge collections in the ancient world. Long before modern universities, long before printing presses, long before digital archives, ancient civilizations were already preserving vast libraries of information, and hidden among them were stories many believed would challenge scripture itself. Part 2. Does older mean original? Notice the assumption hidden inside the argument. The tablets are older, therefore they must be the original source. But historians do not work that way. Imagine two witnesses describing the same event. One writes first, the other writes later. Does earlier automatically mean more accurate? Of course not. Accuracy depends on preservation. For example, for centuries, many scholars believed Troy was fictional, merely a myth described by Homer. Then Heinrich Schliemann excavated the site in the 19th century, and Troy was found. The story was older. But the assumptions about it were wrong. Age did not determine accuracy. Evidence did. Again, for years critics argued King David was legendary. Then in 1993, archaeologists discovered the Tel Dan stela, containing the phrase, House of David, a hostile witness from outside scripture. Again, earlier skepticism did not survive later evidence. Many doubted Pontius Pilate. Then the Pilate stone was discovered in Caesarea, confirming the Roman governor mentioned in scripture. Again, assumptions collapsed under evidence. History repeatedly teaches the same lesson. The earliest explanation is not always the correct explanation. The most popular explanation is not always the correct explanation. And the oldest surviving document is not automatically the original source. Because what matters is not merely age. What matters is explanatory power. Which account best explains the evidence? Which account best preserves coherence? Which account best aligns with history? And suddenly the debate changes completely. There the focus should be on transmission, reliability, integrity, not simply age. An older account can preserve distortion. A later account can preserve accuracy, which means the real question is not which text is older. The real question is which text best preserves the original event. That distinction changes the entire conversation, because now the debate shifts away from chronology and toward reliability. Part 3. The flood stories, side by side. Now we examine the actual texts, not assumptions, the texts themselves. The Epic of Gilgamesh, Atrahasis, Genesis, all contain a flood narrative, but the differences become astonishing. In the Atrahasis epic, humanity is destroyed because people became too numerous and noisy. The gods cannot rest. The flood becomes a solution to inconvenience. In Gilgamesh, the gods panic during the flood. They become frightened. They hide. They regret their own decision. They behave remarkably like humans. But Genesis presents something entirely different. One creator, one moral authority, one coherent judgment. The flood comes because of violence, corruption, wickedness. The issue is moral collapse, not divine annoyance. This distinction matters enormously, because while the stories may preserve memories of catastrophe, they explain that catastrophe in radically different ways. Part 4. The evidence most people never see. Now we reach discoveries rarely discussed. The Sumerian King List, an ancient document describing rulers before and after a great flood. Before the flood, some kings supposedly ruled for thousands of years. After the flood, lifespans suddenly collapse. Notice the similarity. Genesis also records extraordinarily long lifespans before the flood, then gradual decline afterward. Proof? No, but an intriguing parallel. Then comes Sir Leonard Woolley. While excavating the ancient city of Ur during the 1920s, he uncovered massive flood deposits. Not proof of a global flood, but evidence that catastrophic flooding deeply impacted ancient civilizations. And the pattern does not stop there. Researchers have documented hundreds of flood traditions around the world. China, India, North America, South America, Pacific Islands, Africa. Cultures separated by oceans and continents, yet preserving flood memories. Suddenly the question changes. Not, why does Genesis resemble Mesopotamia? But, why does humanity keep remembering floods? Part 5. The historians who changed the debate. The deeper archaeology advanced, the more complicated the criticism became. Sir Austen Henry Layard uncovered Nineveh. Hormuzd Rassam uncovered vast sections of the library of Ashurbanipal. George Smith translated Gilgamesh. Leonard Woolley excavated Ur. And discovery after discovery confirmed ancient civilizations once dismissed as legendary. Then, archaeology began confirming biblical history elsewhere. The Pilot Stone, the Tel Dan Stele, the Cyrus Cylinder, ancient inscriptions, administrative records, royal decrees. Archaeology did not prove faith, but it repeatedly demonstrated something important. The biblical writers were describing real places, real rulers, real civilizations. And that changed the conversation dramatically. Part 6. Plato and the problem of memory. Over 2,300 years ago, Plato proposed the fascinating idea. Human beings often mistake shadows for reality. In his allegory of the cave, people sit watching shadows on a wall, believing the shadows are reality itself, but they are merely reflections, fragments, distortions. This creates a profound possibility. What if ancient civilizations preserved fragments of real events? Not complete history, not perfect memory, fragments, echoes, reflections. And as generations passed, those memories became increasingly shaped by culture and mythology. Part 7. Why Genesis is different. Now we arrive at the most important section. The similarities are real, but the differences are even more important. Mesopotamian myths describe many gods. Genesis describes one creator. Mesopotamian myths focus on divine conflict. Genesis focuses on moral accountability. Mesopotamian gods behave like powerful humans. Genesis presents humanity accountable before a transcendent God. And Genesis does something even more remarkable. It becomes part of a unified narrative: creation, fall, flood, covenant, Israel, Messiah, restoration. Thousands of years, multiple authors, one coherent structure. This is not merely similarity, it is coherence. Part 8. The linguistic problem. Now we reach a point many critics overlook: language. Genesis emerges from a Hebrew worldview. The Mesopotamian accounts emerge from a mythological worldview. Their assumptions differ. Their objectives differ. Their understanding of reality differs. Even when discussing similar themes, they move in completely different directions. This matters because similarity does not automatically mean borrowing. Historians understand that cultures can preserve common memories while interpreting them differently, and linguistic analysis suggests Genesis is doing something fundamentally different from surrounding mythology. Part 9. The question nobody is asking. For more than a century, people have asked, did Genesis copy the Sumerians? But perhaps that has always been the wrong question. Why do flood traditions appear all over the world? Why do catastrophe memories survive for thousands of years? Why do civilizations separated by geography preserve similar themes? Perhaps the real mystery is not the existence of the stories. Perhaps the real mystery is the event behind them. So now, my friends, civilizations changed, languages changed, empires rose and fell, yet certain memories survived. Fragments endured, echoes remained. The remarkable thing is not that Genesis resembles ancient traditions. The remarkable thing is that Genesis remains so coherent, while surrounding traditions became increasingly fragmented. Which raises a fascinating possibility. What if Genesis does not stand at the end of mythology? What if it stands closest to the source of a memory humanity never completely forgot? For generations, people have asked, did the Bible copy the Sumerians? But after following the evidence, perhaps a different question emerges. Why do civilizations separated by continents, languages, and centuries preserve similar memories at all? Because maybe the deepest mystery is not the stories themselves. Maybe the deepest mystery is the event powerful enough to leave its fingerprint upon civilization forever.